Hey guys, we are going to do a little review real fast. I am outside. Two of my three children are outside most of the time fighting. So anyways, hopefully this goes okay. So I wanted to review a couple things. One of them, I wanted to review the menstrual cycle. And then I wanted to review a little bit about fertilization and how the embryo develops. What we're going to plan to go over today though is development of the embryo, pregnancy, and effects on the mother's organ systems. There's no assignment for today, and there's no assignment for lesson number 7. There will be an assessment over the reproductive system, but I'm going to do the same thing I did with the cardiovascular system, where I just give you guys like 4 or 5 short answers to answer. And then I'm still working on the final with the USI professor. So I don't really have any other information for you guys at this point, but let's go ahead and get started on the menstrual cycle. So what you want to remember with a female is it's a lot more complicated than a male's reproductive system because there's 4 hormones. 2 of them are being released from the brain, which is LH and FSH, which go and affect the ovary. The ovary then is going to produce 2 hormones, estrogen and progesterone, that are going to affect the uterus. So LH and FSH that are affecting the ovary are in charge of making that follicle grow bigger, and therefore the egg in the middle of the follicle is going to get bigger and mature as well. Then the other 2 hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are going to tell the uterine wall to get thicker as well as get more vascular. In the middle of a woman's cycle, whether it's 40 days or 30 days, right in the middle, so if it's 40 days, it'd be day 20. If it's 30 days, it'd be day 15. She's going to have a drop in, or I'm sorry, a spike in LH, which then tells estrogen to spike, and tells estrogen to spike, which then tells LH to spike, and then that's going to tell the ovary to actually release that egg. And hopefully, we've been developing 15 to 20 eggs, but hopefully it's just one egg that's going to be released. If not, we might have twins. So after, there's also some neighborhood boys that are fighting very loud right now. So anyways, after the ovary is going to release the egg, the old ovary is then called the corpus luteum, and I wanted to go over that with you guys because that's going to come into play now when we talk about when a woman's pregnant. So when a woman's not pregnant, what happens is the egg is going to travel to the uterus, not be fertilized by a sperm, and not relay any information back to the ovaries, and so those estrogen and progesterone levels fall, and therefore she sheds that uterine lining and starts the whole process over again. However, when fertilization does happen, that fertilized egg is going to communicate back with the ovary, and the ovary is going to tell the it's basically going to signal progesterone and estrogen to keep being made so that that uterine wall can be maintained. So I did want to look at fertilization, just a couple of things here. So with fertilization, you want to make sure you realize that sperm can live for a day or 2 in the woman, but a woman's egg is only going to last 12 to 24 hours. So it's going to take, she's got headphones on, so she has no idea what we're saying right now. But so you really want the sperm to be there when that egg's being released, or you want the sperm to be there right after so that you can make sure that that sperm fertilizes the egg. It can take up to 2 hours and 30 minutes for the sperm to get to the site of fertilization. I have heard this being relayed similarly to if we were dropped in the middle of the ocean and we're asked to swim like 2 or 3 miles to a destination, but you don't know, is that destination north of you, south of you, east of you, west of you? That's kind of how the sperm is it doesn't really have a clear idea of where that egg is. So it does take a lot of time for the sperm to actually get to the egg, and that's why a lot of them actually don't reach there. So once fertilization is going to happen, the first cell is called a zygote, and that's when you consider to have a new individual, meaning that the father's DNA and the mother's DNA has combined, and it is not attached to the uterine wall yet, but at this point, that zygote is going to rapidly divide over and over and over and over again, and it's in the fallopian tube heading towards that uterus. Let's see here. Oh, so the embryo is going to float freely in the uterus, and hopefully it will reach the uterus and be able to implant in the uterine wall. And so at this point, we went from a zygote to an embryo. Then an interesting stage is called a blastocyst. It's like a big clump of cells. And this is when you'd be able to determine if a woman is pregnant or not, like with a, it's called a dipstick pregnancy test where you dip it in the urine. But what it's looking for is it's looking for a hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin hormone. And this is what a pregnancy test is looking for. And what's interesting about this is that this hormone is only there for the first couple weeks of pregnancy. So you could be 9 months pregnant and take a pregnancy test that you can buy at a drugstore, and it would show negative because at the end of the pregnancy, you're not making the HCG, the human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, anymore. Around day 14, the blastocyst, which is about 100 cells, is going to implant into the uterine wall. The implantation, a lot of time women say, is pretty similar to the way cramps would feel when your uterus is trying to get rid of the uterine lining. So some people fear that, oh, I must be going through a miscarriage, when really it's the uterine wall and the blastocysts that are forming a connection. After implantation, you are going to have a couple things develop. And hopefully you remember from the beginning of the year, we talked about pregnancy and labor a little bit, and you remember my wonderful stick baby drawing in the uterus. But what you can see here is that there is a placenta, and the placenta basically is a thickened part of the uterine wall. And there's going to be an umbilical cord that goes from the placenta to baby. Now, no blood is exchanged between mom and baby, but nutrients are. So any oxygen, anything that she breathes in is going to get to baby. Anything that she eats or drinks is going to get to baby. The same thing with any sort of waste that the baby needs to get rid of. So as the baby's its cells are going through cell respiration and using oxygen and releasing CO2, mom is going to take care of that CO2 being released. So with that being said, when the baby is developing, first off, they really recommend that if you know you're wanting to get pregnant, go ahead and act like you're pregnant, because at the beginning of that first trimester, that's when all the major internal organs are being developed. So if you're consuming alcohol, smoking, anything that could potentially be harmful to the baby, it could be more detrimental early on when the baby is going through and actually developing all those significant organ systems. Oh, and then there's also this amniotic sac that is going to have amniotic fluid, and kind of gross, but actually towards the end of it, the baby has consumed almost all of that amniotic fluid, and it is run through the baby's kidneys, and the kidneys have made urine per se. It's not, urine that it would typically have, but so it's kind of gross because at the end of it, they say the baby has really just, all of that has cycled through the baby throughout those 9 months of life. Functions of the placenta. I think I already went through this. Oh, another huge thing, if you look at that becomes an endocrine organ, is after the blastocyst is implanted on that uterine wall, the ovary is not going to make progesterone and estrogen anymore. And so what happens is the placenta is going to become an endocrine organ. So it's the only organ that we have at one point and then we don't have later on. So it's only there during pregnancy, and it's in charge of making estrogen and progesterone and other hormones that help maintain a pregnancy. Some women, when they have miscarriages, it's because the placenta doesn't take over the estrogen and progesterone in the right way that from the ovary. And so you can have this little lag time, and it can have the woman think that she's not pregnant. And so she releases that uterine wall when she actually is pregnant. And so there are times that a woman will take supplemental estrogen and progesterone hormones to make sure that her body realizes that she is pregnant. That is the placenta. I would love to talk to you guys about this because there are a number of people that recommend that you eat the placenta after. I shouldn't say a number of people. There's some celebrities. I believe the Kardashians did this. A lot of people that have home births, they are able to cook it up. There's actually a cookbook that you can find on Amazon about the placenta. But really what it's there for is when it's out of the woman, it has a lot of nutrients. And so if you look up any sort of like mammal giving birth in the wild, you will see that after that female gives birth, she's going to eat the placenta. And the reason why is that she needs to get food. She just went through labor and delivery. She has barely any energy, no nutrients, and there's this literally available resource right there that is really nutrient dense. And so that's why a lot of people, I guess, aren't weirded out by it. I think it's a little bit weird, but feel like you could just eat a turkey sandwich or something, but whatever. I do know that there are some places that you can send your placenta off to, and it will basically dry it out, crush it up into a pill form. So they'll put them in little capsules, and then you can take them. And I think that's what the Kardashians did, but I feel like it's a little bit weird. But whatever. I guess if you have money, you want to do it, go for it. Okay. The last couple things we want to talk about is what is going on with the mom. So I kind of already talked about the beginning stages of the fetus, but that's the most important time when you're getting all those organ systems developed and made. So during the first trimester, a woman might have nausea. A lot of the time during your first pregnancy, you may not even realize you're pregnant. You wouldn't be showing a whole lot because your abdominal muscles are so tight still. After you have more babies, they become looser. Your abdominal muscles do. And so that uterus kind of sticks out a lot, I guess, easier than your other pregnancies. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can actually look at this. Let's see. So nothing really going on with mom yet. I would say probably just the nauseous and vomiting. You might notice a little bit of weight gain. I would say your second trimester is when things, you'll start to show, start to feel the baby kick. The fetus is able to hear. You typically this is when you would get like a fetal ultrasound. You would check the anatomy. So they measure literally everything, like how long's the femur? How long's the radius? How big's the skull? Let's check out the heart. Is the bladder working? Like all these different things. But you do not want to deliver during this time. The baby is not viable at this point. And then the last trimester is when things get dicey for mom. The baby, as you can see, is basically right up under her lungs or her diaphragm. And so the baby is pretty big. It's, moving all of the stomach and the intestines out of the way. So a woman can have a lot of constipation or bowel issues, horrible heartburn, because as the baby's moving the stomach around, it causes the gastric juices in the stomach to start to creep up. And so I remember just like not being able to get any relief, like just popping Tums like they were candy. Going to the bathroom a lot more happens at the end. And the reason why is the uterus is right here and the bladder's here. And so you have like all this weight right on your bladder. And so your bladder is going to have the urgency to go pee more often. You can have some horrible back pains, your sense of your center of gravity's off. So that's just I feel like the last couple weeks are just awful because you're so uncomfortable, especially when and if you have other kids there, you're trying to take care of them, you're working, you're trying to do everything, and sometimes you aren't taking care of yourself the best, and so it can be pretty darn uncomfortable. So that's kind of where we're going to leave it. You guys can go through and read these things, but please email me if you guys have questions. I think I've only gotten maybe 1 or 2 questions that I've hopefully emailed those people back. If I didn't, let me know. Another weird thing that happens during the third trimester is, I think I've talked about this before, but the baby's going to have this hair around it. And then it's going to create this, like, the skin is going to create this super oily discharge, I guess. It's called vernix. And basically it's that stuff that looks like that yellow, nasty cheese on the baby after it's born. And what that is it helps the baby get out of the birth canal. So the baby's super slippery. And there's obviously now in today's age, there's a lot of other things that aid the woman in getting that baby out. And we'll talk about those later. So all you need to do is just listen. If you guys have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those questions. Oh, I have some information down here too. Oh, another thing that's interesting is babies are able to taste whatever food their moms are eating. So I know I have a friend that with one of her kids, she said she would eat salsa like on everything. Like she'd eat it in the morning on her eggs and at lunch and dinner. And that her one kid will just literally like take spoonfuls of salsa. And that's the kid that happened to get salsa all the time. There's new types of ultrasound. So if anyone's going to study radiology over at USI, doing 3D and 4D ultrasounds are really cool, where you can see a glimpse of your baby's facial features um, as you move along throughout the pregnancy. So if you guys have any questions, do not hesitate to ask me. I hope I'm going through everything in an easy way to follow along. And if I'm not, just call me out on it. But I do miss you guys. I'm going to try to do a WebEx here this week or next week, since next week is technically our last week of school, for you guys doing the USI final. As soon as I get that figured out with the professor, I will let you know. But other than that, you know, I hope you guys are doing well. Please keep me updated if you're having any issues. I've tried to reach out to you, a couple of you. I'd love for you to be able to respond to me just to make sure that everything's going okay. But no homework for today's lesson. So just make sure that you listen. And if you have questions, let me know. So we will see you guys later, and hope you have a good one, and try to get outside today because it is really nice. Bye.